Hello, Chair, members of the committee. Adam Smith, City Manager's Office, with presentation on exempt surplus land declaration for successor agency Meadow Street parcels. Recommendations that the committee recommends that the successor agency adopt a resolution titled a resolution of the Oxnard Community Development Commission successor agency declaring successor agency on property as described herein to be exempt surplus land pursuant to government section 54221 F1D, and authorizing staff to take related actions, and two, entering into two separate grant deeds with the city for the transfer of those two parcels from the successor agency located at 6th Street in downtown Oxnard along Meta Street to the city for governmental use for $1 each. And the recommendation is also that the committee recommends that the city council enters into two of those same separate grant deeds with the successor agency for the transfer of those two parcels in downtown Oxnard to the city for governmental use for $1 each. On July 28th of this year, the successor agency recommended the declaration of two successor agency owned properties, which I will show you on a map on a subsequent slide, to be exempt surplus land. By doing this allows the city or the agency to use the land as its own use, such as open space and or recreational use. Here are the two properties located in downtown Oxnard along Meta Street, east of Oxnard Boulevard. The Surplus Land Act governs these two properties, which is a state law that requires a local agency, such as the city or a successor agency, to annually report on surplus land held by that agency. This act seeks to improve the process to provide notice of surplus land for affordable housing. It's essentially an affordable housing bill. And it requires that any land owned outright, not necessary for the agency's use or the city's use, to be declared surplus prior to disposing of that land. Agency's use is defined as land that is used or planned to be used for the agency's work or operations. Successor agency is being asked to declare these additional properties as exempt surplus land, which the city will then use for open space purposes. At that same meeting, July 28th, staff advised the successor agency that a declaration of exempt surplus land by resolution would be presented to the committee, which we have done so and is attached to the staff report. Staff at the time indicated that the sale and transfer could be done through a purchase and sale agreement, but the successor agency also has the authority to transfer the ownership through a grant deed. Doing so saves administrative time and costs associated with preparing a purchase and sale agreement, publishing hearing notices, conducting a hearing, and opening an escrow. The transfer of the additional properties will be for $1 each, with the use of each being contemplated as a governmental use and or public open space. The Oxnard Parks and Recreation Master Plan governs all open space and park decision making in the city for the future development and the management of the city's parks, facilities, beaches, and open spaces. And in that plan, the neighborhood of 5 Points, where the successor agency additional properties locates, 5 Points is identified as the most significant gap in park acreage with per 1,000 residents, with less than 1 acre per 1,000 residents. The master plan also states that the city should consider acquiring some of the vacant lots in these areas to develop into parks when resources become available. On the other hand, it also says that the city has a difficult time managing its existing parks, and the city should focus on funding and improving what the city already has. Finally, the Parks Master Plan states that the city should consider privatize open spaces as a way to increase the amount of park space. Concerns for developing a park in the 5 Points neighborhood include a lack of continuous open space for recreational activities, such as baseball or soccer fields, large-scale activities like that. Additionally, lack of financial and staff resources and staff in the Public Works Department, especially the Parks Division, to maintain existing parks in the city is another challenge. The Parks, Recreation, and Community Services Commission considered this item on January 26th of 2022, where they discussed the need for open space in the 5 Points neighborhood and identified the additional properties as potential future locations for recreational areas. The commission has understood the Parks Division's concerns with challenges with maintaining city parks, which I'll go into on subsequent slides. But the commission still recommended that staff continue to research options for the acquisition of property because of the limited availability of land in 5 Points. Then on May 25th, 2022, the commission approved a recommendation to the council to allocate Measure O, Measure E, or general funds for the purchase of the additional properties to create recreational green space, and then reserve the neighborhood's Quimby Fund balance for the development of a park. Now, the Parks Division has concerns. Currently, the division is responsible for maintaining 38 general fund parks, citywide street landscapes, landscape for public facilities, undeveloped property, Oxnard Beach, and nearly 50,000 trees across the city. Staff has not been able to complete necessary capital improvements in the parks as a result of cuts from previous fiscal years. Additionally, there's issues including long-term deferred maintenance, delays in manufacturing, and delay of parts and equipment, such as the supply chain challenges that not only the city's experiencing, but municipalities throughout the country. There's competing priorities and an inability to hire qualified staff. Quimby funds. Now, stated previously, the 5 Points neighborhood does have a Quimby fund balance, which are funds paid by developers to cities in lieu of constructing new parks. Funds can't be used for the maintenance of a park, but can be used for the acquisition and development of new parks or improvements to existing ones. And as of September of 2022, there's approximately $1.25 million available in Quimby funds for the 5 Points neighborhood. With the recommended action, staff will forward the exempt surplus land resolution and the grant deed for the additional properties to the successor agency and city council, tentatively scheduled for November 1st, 2022. At the same time, staff will also submit the resolution declaring the additional properties as exempt surplus to the California Department of Housing and Community Development for their approval. It's important to note if these actions are not approved by any of the Ventura County Consolidated Oversight Board, the California Department of Finance, or HCD, then this project would effectively end. All successor agencies in Ventura County have to go through the County Oversight Board. Once they approve, their resolution is then forwarded to the California Department of Finance. Now, if any of those two legislative bodies do not approve of the Exempt Surplus Land Act declaration, the project ends. Additionally, if HCD doesn't approve of the resolution, it ends the project as well. In the event that happens, the successor agency has to declare the additional properties as surplus land in accordance with the act, likely subjecting them to affordable housing. Positively, if the declaration of the sites as exempt surplus are approved by the city, the successor agency, the VCCOB, the DOF, HCD, park ideas and potential recreational uses will need to be explored. Staff will return to the committee with information on these additional costs for the design, construction, and maintenance of future open space. A landscape architectural firm will need to be contracted, as well as an engineer's cost estimate for the park construction. And concept and final design will be brought before the council for final approval. In terms of timeline, due to already approved projects through the city's capital improvement projects and the American Rescue Plan Act funding allocation, there's no timeline associated with these future actions. The financial impact: with the approval, the additional properties will be sold and transferred to the city for $1 each. Per the redevelopment dissolution law, which governs all successor agency matters, proceeds from this sale will be transferred to the county for distribution to other taxing entities. Ending the presentation with the recommendations for the successor agency to adopt the resolution declaring the additional properties exempt surplus land, and entering into 2 separate grant deeds with the city for the transfer of the properties for $1 each. And the recommendation, oops, sorry. And a recommendation also is for the city to enter into those two separate grantees with the successor agency for the transfer of the two parcels for $1 each. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.